Hi, I'm James from Future Voices podcast. Today's conversation is with Michelle Hunter, the Director of Programmes for AudioActive. AudioActive is a non-profit organisation that aims to create social change through music, and so much more as today's conversation will show. Hello, Michelle.
Hello, James, and thank you for having me and giving us an opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you very much. My first question is, what is it that makes you get up every day and come in and do this?
So the reason that I get up every day to do this is literally to bring some change to our community and offer children and young people a safe space to create. As we know, creativity really supports young people to develop in their lives, move forward, and also brings back community. And if you can do that through music, you're winning. So it feels like a complete privilege to be able to do this every day, to be honest with you.
That's amazing. And who comes here?
So we currently work with children and young people aged 12 to 25 across kind of different areas in Sussex, so Brighton, Worthing, Crawley, and then we kind of do ad hoc work in Littlehampton, Eastbourne, and a couple of other areas, Horsham. And we're also in 21 schools across Sussex, so we're doing really well at the moment. And again, it's a privilege because those young people get to engage with us and work with our amazing mentors who are all active, trained musicians and have their own bodies of work out. So it's a real privilege.
It's been great to see the growth that you've led across the sector. And I'm often, well, maybe not surprised, but I think it's important to highlight the variety of talent and the variety of music and creativity that AudioActive nurtures.
Yeah, I mean, primarily we are underground black music, and we've been led by our CEO for the last 20 years, Adam Julia, who is just amazing and incredible and has always kind of kept his morals at the forefront of everything he does, which was another reason why I really wanted to come and work for AudioActive, because I knew I was going to be working alongside a safe pair of hands and also working with a brilliant team. And, you know, to be able to work with young people who might come in and say, I don't know what I want to do, I don't even know if I want to make music, but I want to be able to say what I'm feeling and watch them go through a cathartic process with our mentors is just outstanding and brilliant. I mean, honestly, I come to work every day and I see what they do, and no matter what happens, I'm always blown away by the delivery. And then we have rap and production, then we do groups for young women, non-binary and trans young people to come together and work with us. And we have, you know, all genders are welcome, and we just want everyone to come in and have a great time with us. So primarily that's what we do.
It's a great, I love every now and then you'll send me a text that's got like a link to one of the bands or one of the artists that you're working with. So the passion always shines through, but the talent is amazing. I think when we were talking before, we were thinking around how do you manage, because some of the young people that you work with may be experiencing, they may have experienced trauma, they may still be experiencing trauma. They may have experienced abuse, they may still be experiencing abuse at the time that you're working with them. How do you hold that in your role, but how do you support your staff that are working with young people where the end goal is to increase safety, but they may still be suffering harm at the time?
That is a really good question, and as you know, it's always kind of a tricky kind of thing to manage, really, because you have lots of emotions and feelings and difficulties in that, and your own kind of personal feelings in that as well. But primarily it's about communication and listening and really hearing what's going on for the young person, the staff member, and then us as a wider team, and how we are supporting using multi-agencies that we work with, signposting, but also other grassroots organisations. So over in Worthing, we do a lot of work with Sid Youth. We do a lot of work with Kicks up in Crawley, also the Crawley Boxing Club in Brighton, multiple services. You know, so because we come together and we look at it as a community thing or a community issue and problem, I feel like we hold the young person well through that. We don't always get it right. I don't think anyone does. But what we do get right is we will talk to young people. We will support them through it all, and we stay from the beginning to the end. And because we're open up until people are 25, we sometimes get the privilege of seeing good outcomes for young people that are going through difficulties. And, reassuring young people that actually you might be passing over to us something that feels huge and big for you right now, but in the long run there will be an outcome. And you've told us that because you feel unsafe. And that's like one of the kind of key factors of getting safeguarding right, I think, because when someone hands over that concern or worry to you, you're almost holding them and everyone else through it in a way that you have to do it really gently and really kind of support and with a bit of love as well, to be honest with you. So yeah, that's pretty much what we do.
And how do you sit at the top of the tree where the safeguarding comes to you?
Yeah.
How do you hold your teams when they're worried and when they're anxious?
I think, first of all, there's not kind of a wide map of it. You have to do it individually because each person is different and each case is different. So what I try and do is come at it in an individual kind of way and make sure that we're listening to what's going on and then thinking about best outcomes and discussing those outcomes. And I'm quite proud to say that actually we've had some brilliant feedback from different services, Brighton Hove City Council, Crawley, Worthing. We work with fantastic people up there and actually sharing that, because it's not just mine to hold, it's all of ours to hold. So making sure that that's kind of, that shared responsibility is really considered in it all. But also I will call my team and say, do you want some RPS? Do you want a one-to-one? Do you want some time off? Do you want to just go for a walk? Do you want to cry? Do you want to shout? Do you want to make some tunes? Like, what do you need? And also ask how they're looking after themselves as well. And then also considering my well-being and how I look after myself. And that is paramount really to, making sure that you can hold those issues and incidents with people. And there's been quite a lot that's gone on, all of which we've resolved with police and other services and within ourselves as well, and just kind of talking and having regular team meetings, regular meetups, and my phone is on, if people want to speak to me, they're more than welcome to. And I think that's, you have to do that. You can't just go, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, it's 5 o'clock in the evening, that's it, we're done. Because that's not how the world works. At the same time, making sure that I don't get burnt out and I do have cut-off points. So don't call me on a Saturday or a Sunday, really, unless it's really urgent. So, and also using my manager, Adam, yourself, when I meet with you, and really kind of talking those things through. And fortunately with you, you're not the kind of person who's like, we're on the clock for this time. You will allow me occasionally to ring you and say, I don't know what to do, which I really appreciate. And I think that that's really important to all of us, kind of understanding that, when you've got vicarious trauma coming your way, it's not just, it can bring up other things for other people as well. So also being really aware of other people's life experiences.
You're reminding me very much of the operational demands when you're managing not only the response for individuals that you're working hard to help and support and safeguard, but also the welfare of your teams and the welfare of yourself. And I feel that this particular series of interviews is very much about thinking in that multi-agency lens around what does each part of the system need to do, what does each part of the system need to offer each other in order to work effectively, so that we minimise those gaps. And we know that often people will say that people should work more closely, multi-agency working needs to be improved, information sharing needs to be improved. So how is the question? And when you're talking around the work that you do, and obviously I have an insight into this because of our relationship, but the work with other agencies, with local authorities, what do you need from them in order to be as effective as possible for your cohort of children?
Again, really good question. I think it's more about what they actually need from the government. It's more about resource. It's more about kind of, building teams and opportunities for people to be able to have space to zoom out. Like, there's times when I need space to zoom out and have 24 hours. And sometimes you haven't got 24 hours, but if you can get that, then that's a privilege. And I see lots of colleagues feeling very weighted and lots put on them. And sometimes, you know, people think, oh, this person didn't do this or this service didn't do that. And a lot of it comes down to time. I also feel like training and kind of network meetings and coming together and things like that, they need to be improved a little bit more. But I know everyone's working towards that. And I'm not saying that in a way to put pressure on anyone at all. It's just that, you know, in an ideal world, that's what we need. But I also think that relationship building is, you know, paramount to everything. And in an age where we're digitalized and it's all kind of email and there's no faces, I'm really old school. I pick the phone up and other people aren't. But, you know, it's kind of about bringing that back together. I think the pandemic had a massive impact on all of us and our working. I feel like the best thing to come out of the pandemic for me was being able to do team meetings online and not taking hours out of my day or anyone else's day travelling everywhere. And really, you know, there's not a lot of excuses to not turn up to those meetings. Obviously, safeguarding trumps everything, but that's a way of people finding out who's who. But I also think that comes down to my team members and other team members across, you know, the counties to kind of get to know each other and reach out and use things like LinkedIn or, you know, their managers kind of doing meet and greet days. And maybe I think it would be great if there was kind of like a think tank from different services coming together about how you can share practice. And it's not just like we're sharing practice in this forum, this is what we're doing, because actually people get a lot more out of things when it's just a kind of a meet and greet meet up, and a bit of R&R never goes amiss.
I'm thinking around discussions that we've had where perhaps different agencies might be arriving around the table or the metaphorical table with an idea of what they want to achieve. Yeah. And the discussion can come, or the discussion can play out where people are wanting to convince the other person of what they want. Yeah. And we've talked a lot about how often what we need to boil that back down to is everyone on the same page of understanding how we've arrived here? Are we clear about what the needs or the unmet needs are for this child or for this group or for this family? And how do we then work to align the approach that we can take forward, even if we don't necessarily achieve a consensus? But what is it that each person needs to do in order to maximise the impact? And I'm interested, particularly for your organisation, in the community, voluntary, third sector, however people may describe that, around when you arrive into forums often where it may feel that decisions have been made, and that with your closeness to young people and the relationships you hold, how do you navigate the tension if you have a different view, or if you feel that the young person is not being represented fairly, or that the decision making isn't responding in the best way?
Yeah. Very good question, and a tricky question to answer. I think the first thing that popped in my mind, and fortunately we don't come across this a lot, but everyone needs to leave their ego at the door and come in as a professional. And that includes us. You know, we might think we know what's best for a young person, but actually we might not have all the kind of jigsaw puzzle pieces, so we might not know. But if we are representing, or I am representing, or my team are representing a young person to the best of our ability with their blessing and their kind of understanding of what we're going to be saying on their behalf if they're not in the room, and we always try and make sure the young person's in the room, or a family member where possible, because they're the people we're talking about, and it just feels a bit strange sometimes to be speaking about someone who's not present. And I think that's a key thing. I think the other thing is just kind of, you know, people need to be open to ideas and suggestions, and we don't have all the answers and ideas and suggestions, but together you can all come up with a really good outcome. And I think it goes back to that. It takes a village to raise a child, kind of, you know, the African proverb. And it does go back to that. And I think if everyone can come in with that, then you can bring about really positive outcomes. And again, you know, communication is really key, and sharing information is key. And sometimes, because of the landscape changing and GDPR and things like that, if people aren't trained in that and they don't have enough knowledge, they can get stuck on certain things. So they might not share something that they could have shared, or they might just be too busy to prepare before the meeting, which again is really, really kind of unusual to happen, but it does and can happen, as we know from spanning our careers and different things that have happened. Not AudioActive, pleased to say, but, you know, things do happen and arise. So I think if everyone comes in with a kind of like, you know, their service is doing this part for the young person, but an understanding of each other's kind of roles in it, then that really helps and supports people to move forward. And also not being afraid to say, I got that wrong. And I do that a lot. I will say, I got that completely wrong, because that puts other people at ease as well. Because if you're bold enough and honest enough to be able to say, yeah, oh, sorry, I misheard that, or I got that wrong, other people feel at ease. No one's there to prove a point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And I'm still reflecting on something you said earlier around having the time to be able to think and prepare in advance of going into that multi-agency discussion or that forum. And I'm thinking back in particular to a really difficult decision that I was needing to make as a senior leader around whether or not we would issue proceedings for secure accommodation. And there was a lot of contention, difference amongst the network, and going home and rightly or wrongly spending an entire evening mapping out across the table, have I really understood what my health colleagues are raising and what they're recommending? Have I balanced that with what the family are telling me, what the young person's saying? And, you know, in that particular circumstance, I felt I needed to go and meet with that young person. That was important to me in order to make the decision. Have I really understood what my police colleagues are telling me? And have I understood it to the best of my ability from their context? And I can certainly say, having now spent time working in different contexts, including the police, that I didn't really fully understand the context, and I didn't have the appreciation of where they were coming from with some of the information they were presenting. And you're making me think about when we go in and as you were saying earlier, about this idea of how do we maintain open boundaries so that we can hear what other people are saying and actually consider it, and really think about how that influences decision making. That's my reflection. I don't think there's a question in that.
No, but I think just kind of picking up on that, I think it's important that, you know, we look at different ways that we work together, and also making sure that we are considering the child at every opportunity. But also, when you are in a SMT, SLT kind of, you know, role, you have to make tough decisions that people don't like. You have to sometimes say no, and you have to be that voice that people don't want to hear. So there has to become a bravery about that. And sometimes, you know, you might not have it right. But if you're doing it with the best intention and the best will, and you have considered everything, it sounds like you did in that, you know, the fact you went home and mapped it all out yourself meant that you were really thinking about what you were doing. You weren't just kind of like, no, this is what we're doing, kind of bloody mindedness. And I think when you work with supporting with young people, and especially when you're working with young people who are being exploited or at risk of harm or are being harmed, there are some really tricky and difficult decisions to make, and you have to kind of not be afraid of it. And as long as you do it within policy, procedure and law, then you're okay. And I do believe that.
It's interesting thinking around you know, I know we've sat down and worked through, okay, let's break this down and work out where are we with these things? Why are we feeling the way we're feeling? Does that link in with what we're bringing to the table as individuals? And I was thinking around the importance of supervision, and those things aren't always available straight away. And so we do have to find the time to prepare as best we can. And I was just thinking then that no one teaches people how to do this. You know, I was thinking just as we're talking that me personally, I've been very fortunate to have managers that I've learnt from, and certainly one manager that would say, stop sending emails, pick the phone up.
Yes.
Have the conversation, build the relationship with someone, as opposed to the email. And actually, she was completely right. That was very effective. If she listens to this, she'll probably know, who she is. But other people also taking the time to say, you know, when I'm worried about something, and I'm not necessarily conscious that I'm worried about it, but someone coming along and saying, okay, what are you worried about? You know, and giving you the confidence. I remember one senior leader saying to me, James, we're a learning organisation. What do we need to do now? And that absolutely took away this panic almost that I had early on in my career as a team manager around, have I made a mistake? what's going to happen to the child and also what's going to happen to me. So being able to sit down and work that through with someone that creates the conditions for you to be able to think, I think is so important. And the parallel for me is what you've described, not only the way in which you work with your staff and the musicians and the creatives, artists, but also how you work with your young artists and the young people. So what I'm hearing from you is how the organisation mirrors that through the structure, which for me, I feel I've observed that to be really effective. So
it's a respect, isn't it? It's a mutual respect and a respect for kind of understanding people and where they're coming from. And I think just kind of like speaking about managers and, you know, good leaders and, you know, what really makes a good leader. I think leading from the back makes a good leader, someone who, you know, is there to kind of do that more than follow me, you know. I think that is a really good way of kind of, you know, doing that. And also when your team kind of go, oh my God, this is going really wrong, I'm going to call Michelle now, or I'm going to call Adam, or I'm going to call Joe or Tom, whoever it is, to kind of, you know, just bounce it off. I think that's amazing, because they know in their mind that they're going to be able to share that responsibility, and there will be some kind of action or outcome if it's required. And other times it is just a tempering of like, it's okay, it's all right, it's fine, this is fine, this is okay, there's always problems, don't worry about it, let's solve it together. What do you think should happen? That kind of thing.
It's so important that we deliver that so that those that are working with families can do the same.
Yeah.
When families are in crisis, when they're struggling, or just generally in our practice, how we're able to do exactly what you've just described. And I feel strongly that in order to do it, we have to be able to deliver that in-house as well. I think
when you don't deliver that, that's where a distrust for services comes from. I think, you know, we work with a lot of families and young people primarily who may have had a difficult time with services. I'm not going to mention any services because that would be really unfair. And then you kind of watch them relationship build a little bit and that change come about. And I don't know whether that's because we've taken a trauma-informed approach within Sussex, or because people are actually considering things a little bit more, or whether actually because some of our colleagues, like across the board, have been more affected by the cost of living. And so there's a little bit there's less of a distance between people who are working in services and people who are engaging in services. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know, you know, some people come in because of their own lived experience and shared experience, or understand, you know, whatever it is. But I feel like people really are listening to each other a bit more now. So because they're listening to each other more, they're hearing what's going on in their communities, and that can help. And when you're kind of managing someone and leading someone, and you know, sometimes they're leading you. Definitely, I definitely have that, because I don't know everything at all, and I would never profess I do. It's really interesting because it is that kind of grasshopper experience of the teacher becomes the student, the student becomes the teacher. And I think, you know, we're all people just trying to get through it all together. So I think if we keep adapting that a little bit more, and then take in all the great work that we know how to work and you know, things to hang it off of, then we will move forward positively, and there will be less distrust for services, and there will be better engagement in schools, and, you know, things like that. I think that's a real impact. And even the fact that the schools that we work in have opened their doors to us to be able to go in and support, you know, children and young people on a one-to-one basis and group work basis who were, you know, at risk of permanent exclusion, because they themselves don't want to send children to PRUs at all. You know, they don't really want to go down those routes, because we all know what that leads to in the long run. It's brilliant. So, you know, I think if you take any negative, you can find a positive, and we're about that. I'm definitely about that as a person. I like that kind of silver line thinking somewhere down the line.
There's a few things that I wanted to ask you coming straight out of that, but the first thing, just on that point that you were saying around people inviting you in, one of my questions was going to be around what do you as AudioActive, or you as a non-statutory agency, what do you need from partners? But I guess actually what you're starting to describe is what young people, what children need from partners, which perhaps is that openness and that invitation in.
Yeah. And just kind of, you know, I think one of the successes for AudioActive is that we don't say, you come in and you learn this. We say, you come in and you can learn this, and we're led by them in our open access sessions and even in our group work sessions. I mean, we might go in with kind of an outcome that's desired, but really they tell us and we allow that, you know, to happen. And then also, even when we're doing like outreach in the communities and we're either doing a cypher or putting music on, and they're making music in a skate park, literally, it's brilliant to do. And then you kind of hear what's going on for them and what they're speaking about. And you're able to kind of like be that kind of bit of a middle ground between what someone might think and what they are actually saying. And we do get lots of really beautiful feedback from young people, and we do get that trust. And I think one of the reasons why we get that trust is because we respect them as young artists. And, you know, yes, we do refer to them as young people, but we also they're just people and they're young artists and they're up and coming. And some of them are like, don't identify as an artist at all, but they identify with their group within AudioActive. And I think with music, because it doesn't have any kind of, you know, race, religion, sexuality, anything like it, it's a sound, people can relate to it. So you're having all sorts of different people who like love a beat. So it's almost like that shared kind of doing this is like a womb experience of coming together and loving and nurturing and growth. And so the fact we can do that is beautiful, and the fact that we can then support young people to have a sense of belonging, which is one of the biggest factors for young people getting involved in different difficulties, especially with county lines and stuff like that. You know, you can kind of steer people in different ways and let them have some positive kind of risk taking going on, and you know, have different conversations with young people where they actually think, oh, I don't mind school now because, you know, I'm writing a rap, my English has got better. Or I quite like maths because I've learnt how to make a beat, and actually there's maths in that and science, and, you know, so you get all of those kind of like marry-ups, and you teach young people that actually transferable skills can really help you in your life. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, the talent.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, the talent you're nurturing it's not just music, as if we say just music. It's everything that goes along with that.